Thank you for coming back. We're so happy to have you back here for the second half of the Startup Day. As part of the Cyber Week, we have the Startup Day. I think you saw the exciting exhibition up there. If you have the time later today, go and visit the startups. Personally, I was kind of amazed from the variety of domains that the startups are covering, and also for the new paradigms and new thoughts being brought to cybersecurity. So please join to the exhibition later. As we continue the day, we want to see a little bit about thinking about the future and thinking a little bit about what is probably a future coming for us, people who are dealing with the cyber industry. Being a venture capitalist, I spend a lot of time thinking of actually not for the industry now, because it's too late. You've already missed the opportunity. But what actually the future 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And normally as a venture capital, you try to project, you try to create a story of the future, and hopefully if your story of the future meets reality, you may be picking some early winners. Israel has been very good in actually projecting the progression of industries. If we look at cybersecurity, we started much before others did. Same with cannabis tech now. Same a lot with, in Israel did with blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I think each time again we see kind of like the projections of the Israeli venture capital industry leading to some interesting companies and interesting evaluations uplift by Israeli innovation companies. So it gives me a great pleasure for the next panel about what is the innovation in 5 years? What is actually the future? Do you hold the crystal ball? So for the crystal ball, we'll ask Roy Meron, who is the director in the Economy of Growth Center for the Israel National Cyber Directorate, to talk with us and his panelists. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Nimrod. As Nimrod said, I am Roy Yarom, Director at the Strategy Division of the Israeli National Cyber Directorate. And now we'll be speaking in the next 45 to 50 minutes about innovation in 5 years' time. Now, this is something that under my capacity as the one delivering the long-term goals of the INCD, the promotion of the industrial base, promotion of the ecosystem, it's of course a fascinating and a most relevant issue. But we won't be taking just a technological perspective. We have a variety of perspectives here from our esteemed panelists. So without further ado, I have the honor of inviting Mr. Martin Brummel, Head of Business Division of the Central Bohemian Innovation Center. Please, sir. Ms. Algirde Pipikaite, a project lead at the Center of Cybersecurity, the World Economic Forum in Geneva. My dear friend Ami Levin, Head of Cybersecurity at the Foreign Trade Administration, Government of Israel. And last but not least, Roy Barkat, an investment director in Intel Capital. So, what we'll do here is pretty simple. My esteemed colleagues will present themselves and their organization for a few minutes. Then I'll ask a couple of rounds of questions. If we have time, maybe take from the floor. So,
hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the lunch break, which was delivered by our organization, which is the Central Bohemia Innovation Center. This is the organization which was founded and created by the regional government of Central Bohemia. This is the region surrounded Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, in the... I think I don't need it because we just decide no presentation, just this first picture. So our region is with the Prague really in the heart of Europe. It means not only geographically, but also, let's say, mentally. So we are deeply connected with the Western Europe, like in Germany, Austria, but we have also the historical relation with the eastern part of Europe, with the former communist countries, which is sometimes very unique experience to make the bridge of those cultures. The goal of the organization is to increase competitiveness of the companies. It means manage the access to the markets, access to funding, and also to the technologies. So I think this is a challenging task, and I hope that we will see what will be happening in 5 years.
Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for inviting and organizing a great Cyber Week. It's one of the great events to attend throughout the year. I am Algirde Pipikaite from the World Economic Forum, a newly established Center for Cybersecurity. And since the World Economic Forum is a global public-private organization fostering that collaboration between the two sectors, rather than just talking about innovation itself, I'll take opportunity to actually put a couple of challenges of what we need to think in developing next generation technology and innovation, and what we as entrepreneurs and as investors need to think and consider when doing so. It's an honor to be here. I presume we are not doing presentation right now, just an introduction.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making the effort to come back after lunch, which was very generously offered by our Czech friends. As Roy said, my name is Ami Levin. I am part of the Ministry of Economy and Industry in Israel, the Foreign Trade Administration. Right now, actually, I have a double capacity over there of leading our operations on cybersecurity in collaboration with the INCD and with the Israel Export Institute. We are really the triangle that is busy in promoting the Israeli cyber industry in global market. Apart from that, I'm also heading the European division in the organization, which is very relevant to our work on cyber, but of course not exclusively. I think that when we will be offered the floor to make our comments, we'll try to shed some light on the importance of global cooperation, of international cooperation, in order to make sure that innovation is efficient and is also streamlined. This is not obvious, of course, because cyber is a very wide issue. It's also a sensitive issue that touches many subjects that are sensitive and do not lend themselves quite easily to this kind of international cooperation. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Roy Barkat. I'm an investment director with Intel Capital. I've been doing venture for about 10 years across a couple of funds. A few words about Intel Capital. We are probably the largest, one of the oldest corporate VCs globally. Today our focus is primarily the US, Israel, and China. Just to give you a little sense of what that means, last year in 2018 we did about $120 million in Israel out of 400 globally. So we have a lot of focus and a lot of attention in Israel. We primarily invest in rounds A and B. We're flexible, but that's our sweet spot. And we have been and will continue investing in cybersecurity. We have a whole set of portfolio companies, and we're in a pipeline of cybersecurity companies. So that's a main focus for our fund.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brummel, I'll hand over the mic to you in a minute. Innovation hubs are intriguing entities. We hear a lot about them in recent years, and they obviously have a very unique role in making a whole bigger than the sum of its parts. Can you tell us about a bit of your success metrics as an organization? How do you define your success stories? Can you illustrate to us a bit the added value that such a hub can give?
Thank you for this question, because it is really not the easy one for a start, because especially in Europe, in our region, there was the different institution, the European institution, government institution, put a lot of effort and money and energy to creation such a hubs, and I can tell you that they were created, many of them, and not all of them are in the real operation. They have some. They have any real outputs for real world for the companies. So from my point of view, the success measurement, it's if those hubs can deliver any services to the real companies or academic institutions. So it means that after, let's say, 1 or 2 years work, it's some existing project, existing outputs, existing results. It has also some measurement from the economical point of view. Because many of them, and I can tell you we have several of them in Czech Republic, they are existing, they are not working only on a paper, but they are producing only studies or something. So that's, from my point of view, after 2 years, you can evaluate if they were any real hard project delivered.
Thank you. Algirde. Innovation, you know, innovation is the ultimate, let's say, sexy word, almost universally perceived as positive. Innovation is good. Everyone's trying to push innovation and have more of it. But what are the risks associated with innovation as a unique force? Looking 5 years ahead into the future, what should we look into as the risk associated with unrestrained innovation?
Thank you for this question, and I think that's a question that a lot of us are asking, globally and locally. I'm sure in Israel that's an answer that you try to find, and the same we're doing in the World Economic Forum. When I think about it, I see actually a couple of challenges. One of them, that the adoption of innovation and technology is becoming really drastically fast. The pace is changing. If it took around 60 years for automobiles to have 50 million users, it took around 12 years or so for internet to get 50 million users. And then it took 2 years for Facebook to get 50 million users. And if you're familiar with Pokemon Go, it took 19 days. So the next wave of innovation that will be mass adopted might take only a couple of hours to get 50 million users. That means that the challenge of societal impact is much bigger and much quicker. So how do you prepare and respond? And while the pace is increasing, the complexity is increasing as well drastically. Current, not even self-driving cars, but just any automobile, new automobile that you would go and buy here in Israel or in the United States, has around 100 million lines of code. And it's not even self-driving. Presumably the version 5 fully self-driving car will have around 1 billion lines of code. CERN, which is based in Geneva, the European Nuclear Research Center, that actually runs massively complex physical research on nuclear power and the beginning of Earth, runs on 40 million lines of code. So a simple car that you buy for $30,000, $40,000 is double more complex than the whole CERN. So if you actually don't incorporate security and responsibility in the code from the get-go, either being entrepreneur or navigating entrepreneurs from investment perspective, to change and to facilitate and to add upon security or responsibility into that code, into that data readability, will be much more challenging. And while we are innovating locally, actually technology is being applied globally. So, small challenges when you meet entrepreneurs. If you are developing facial recognition technology, and you just let your AI go on Google and identify all the images and learn from that, and then you try to apply, and you do that in the United States or in Europe, you learn on people like myself, and you try to apply the same technology in Asia or an African continent, you do not recognize one face. So how do we capture that challenge on a global perspective? I'd love Aldo also to weigh in on that, thinking on the global perspective, and how do you bridge that gap between pace and complexity and between East and West?
Thank you. Ami, I am skipping you at the moment. I'd like to go to Roy Barkat first.
It will give him more time to think.
Yes, yes, I see you are in need of it. You get the easy question, Roy. Where we will be in 5 years' time? From a perspective of an investment firm, how will the technological landscape in cybersecurity will look in your mind? What will be at the front? Is it even possible to predict? I mean, is cybersecurity will still be a recognizable theme in itself?
Okay, so thank you for the very easy question. I think the very easy answer is I don't know. But if I have to apply some sort of intelligent, semi-intelligent answer, I think that there are a few vectors. I think one, unfortunately, the continuous race that we've always been seeing in cyber is going to continue. So, attackers are going to advance, and protection, well, hopefully, it seems like will advance as well. We're going to get more attack surfaces. As the technologies and services that we consume, the products that we consume are more complex. There's more data. Everything is more mission critical. That creates a lot of opportunities for attackers. So that race is going to continue. A separate element is, I think that, and I mentioned data, but I think that data with regards to security is going to advance as well. So we're going to have machine learning and AI and all the insights that we're able to gather out of those capabilities. And by the way, the road until we are able to leverage AI and machine learning is, we still have a road ahead of us. Essentially, what we need to have happen there is the amount of effort that we apply into machine learning is not as or is lower than the value that we can extract. But definitely AI, machine learning, putting aside the buzzwords, that is probably going to be part of what we're going to see in 5 years from now. Let me see what else. I hope that standardization and some sort of collaboration or increased collaboration will take place, although that is, I don't want to be pessimistic, but it's hard. It's hard to get organizations collaborating, but it just makes a lot of sense. High level, I think that's where we're going to see in 5 years.
Thank you very much. Ami, in light of everything we are hearing, as a commercial diplomat, the one responsible for maintaining and promoting Israel's network of commercial collaborations in the world, how do you see the government's role in streamlining innovation, in getting over obstacles and making sure we maximize the potential benefits?
Okay, so I also thank you for the question. It's a challenge to try and respond, and I'm taking the guide here from the answers that were given by my 3 colleagues. And I think I would argue 2 things in the beginning that relate to an extent to what was presented. First of all, that innovation has to be seen as something good. Okay. And I would explain a bit why this may be the case. And the second is that mass and critical mass is also important in order to generate impactful innovation processes. First of all, maybe as terminology, I really think that the challenges that were presented by Algirde are substantial. But I also think that we should be precise and and assume and do not assume that every novelty in the market is by in itself an innovation. Okay, so the rate of adoption is only one metric that we have to take into account. Innovation processes, especially for the government, and the classic role, as presented by Mr. Aaron this morning, is to make sure that all the pieces work in harmony and that government intervenes where there's a need to intervene to cultivate those fields in the ecosystem that need to be financed and cultivated in order to pursue national goals, priorities that are understood as important by the government and by the state. And as you know, the Israeli case is very telling in this regard. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, innovative products and innovation processes equip us with, again, something that we should understand as positive, as good, that is more options to defend ourselves, more alternatives for policymakers in order to take the right decisions in face of a crisis. So 5 years from now, I hope, or maybe I don't have a crystal ball, as maybe was suggested by Nimrod, but certainly in order to generate impactful innovation on cybersecurity, we will have to see, with the help of commercial representatives, with the help of people that are agents for international cooperation, we have to see exactly how we generate meaningful, impactful products and services in cyber that can really tackle and answer the challenges that were presented by Roy and by Algirde. That is the emergence of 5G, the emergence of AI, with all the ethical implications and ramifications, and of course everything that we witness already now. I mean, we are living the wave of digital transformation. We are witnessing digitalization in a rapid pace in many traditional sectors of the economy, which open those developments, open new frontiers. It allows us to consume services in a better way. It makes, of course, the markets more interesting and are being disrupted every couple of months or years. But of course, the cyber challenges are crucial over there. Now, Israel, led by the INCD, supported by us, is trying to promote the philosophy that no one single nation is able to tackle all of these challenges together. We need to forge the right alliances to work with like-minded friends, organizations, stakeholders, and states in other places to really give answers to those challenges, and it may be seen in a sectoral manner. It may be seen as case by case by every sector of the industry. And as you may be aware, we are trying to promote here in Israel centers of excellence and labs open to international collaboration, open to international stakeholders in order to bring to the market new products and solutions to different sectors, to different verticals such as energy, such as healthcare, banking, industry, and automotive, of course, so on and so forth. I would conclude by saying that people like us, okay, the people on the ground that are motivated, of course, but are able to target those important people in other ecosystems and those governments that have the motivation to collaborate with Israel. And those are important. They are still important to forge the right bridges. In this regard, we have to consider the importance of government-to-government collaboration and agreements, which give the right signals to private sector stakeholders to promote this type of collaborations.
Well said, thank you. Martin, as you mentioned before, we see this trend of building geographical clusters of innovation, pulling together academy, industry, and governments and NGOs. We're also seeing a somewhat more a newer trend of trying to build a network of these hubs. Hubs in different countries who are based on their geographical proximity are now talking about a network amongst themselves. How do you see this trend? How do you see it materializing in 5 years? How do innovation hubs in different countries can collaborate?
No, I think the first answer is the reality is the hubs and the companies, they have to collaborate, because this is one of the main obstacles that all of the organizations, regardless of private or public, are focused on themselves. Even on the conferences, they will declare that everybody will cooperate with everybody, but in reality, everyone is a little bit scared to share his IP. So the first thing that's it's not only in the geographic neighborhood, the hubs, they have to create networks, but also through the not only, for example, within Europe, but also start the overseas cooperation, because that's only the global solutions has such chance for a real success. I think I can say it, not only we are now here in Tel Aviv, but from my point of view, we can get the real inspiration from Israel, because I will give you example. I've been working for a project with Cyber Gym 5 years ago exactly, and was part of the team bringing the arena to the Czech Republic, to the Central Bohemia. And one of our first questions was if they are not aware to share the information, share the scenario, because everybody could be the client, so that everybody can steal their IP. And they said simply that they don't care, because the rule is to be always the step ahead. So it's no chance to, or no, it makes no sense to protect it too much. So, and if we overgo this kind of mindset and will not be too afraid to share the information and do the real business within the network, this is a key issue for success.
Thank you. Algirde, following up on what you previously mentioned, can you give us some practical higher resolutions examples of the responsibility you believe investors and managers have when investing in innovative technologies? And if I might add, you talk about the need to secure by design innovative solutions. Do investors who invest in cybersecurity technology, they also have a sort of responsibility? Do you recommend they also to look into this perspective? Do you expect them to do anything?
That's a very timely question, if I may, Roy. Actually, next week, the World Economic Forum is launching a report for the investment community with the framework and toolkits of what they could apply to actually help their entrepreneurs and their portfolio companies produce next generation technology with security when it's needed, with privacy in mind and prioritized. I think most importantly, and we heard in previous panel, is currently the boards and the boardroom is really concerned with cybersecurity. And how do they keep their companies and their data that they are collecting and they have and possess more secure. I think investment community is where boardroom was 3 or 4 years ago. The debate and the discussion and the actual questions on responsibility and liability is just being posed among the community, and they're actively trying to understand of what is their role so that next scandals that we will see related to cybersecurity or technological breaches do not concern them. And how do they not only secure their investment portfolio, but also evaluate companies that they are looking to invest into. And the framework that we have developed actually allows investors to evaluate and assess company on 2 levels. If you are looking to invest new technology in more secure and responsible manner, you need not only to look into organizational security, actual company security, people, processes, and tools, but you also need to look into evaluating innovation, so the code itself. provenance of code, bibliography of code, the actual data consumption, if data can be interfered or not, and then privacy by design and by default, and security by design and by default. And actually, we mapped out all of these requirements or criteria that investors should be looking at with already existing regulations globally or standards that potentially might end up being regulations. So that when we refer to privacy by design or default or security by design and default, we already know that GDPR requires that. So if you're looking into European market, it's just better for you. What I actually also discovered in working with the investment community is that because there are so many security breaches that a lot of enterprise clients are actually very pessimistic in applying IoTs and actually putting IoTs and sensors throughout their processes. And Bain & Company actually ran research recently that found that executives, 95% of executives are willing to pay 25% higher price for IoTs and actually apply them within their company if security features are designed. That means there is a massive margin in the market that can be tapped into if you are first starting evaluating and prioritizing security.
Ami, let me throw you a little curveball, but a gentle one. You know, innovation and front technologies, as they are called, AI, quantum computing, etc., they are becoming an integral part of the perception of national security. And this changes the way the world dynamics between countries and between alliances shape. Do you see your job in the following years becoming easier or more difficult?
I definitely see it becoming more interesting. Okay, I believe, and this is the challenge that we are trying to assume, is really putting a focus on really understanding of developing an in-depth understanding of technological developments and trends. Something that was not how we viewed our job 20 years ago or 15 years ago. That is to say, most of you, Israelis or foreign, are familiar with your own national trade promotion agency. You think, okay, there's somebody over there in the embassy giving advice to exporters. They help you really sell boxes or taps or whatever it is, and sometimes also they can help my technology service. In the Israeli case, and because of the prominence and importance we see to really working with companies, with big corporates and with countries on digital transformation, we require, and we think that we will have to continue requiring, that our staff is able to respond to technological needs. And as I said before, our staff and our people will have to develop a good sense of understanding technological trends, investment trends, and how Israel can play a part in, first of all, helping Israel, and second of all, forging the right alliances. And of course, on the same time, helping the Israeli companies, the Israeli firms, to make a buck, okay? Because at the end of the day, we are still the commercial side of the Israeli diplomacy. This is something that is already happening. It, of course, will depend a lot. It will depend a lot on what will eventually happen with the cybersphere, everything that we have just discussed. If it will gradually but safely, spill into the field of national security, hardcore, I think that eventually commercial diplomacy will not play such an important role because, this is not for us. There are other people who can do this. But as we understand the cyber business today, and the 400 and something Israeli companies and vendors that we have, all of those are potential clients. And speaking from my own experience, it's a pleasure to work with those people. They are quick, they are agile, they are quite confident that they can change the world, and they have the golden solutions for every vertical, for every corporate, including Intel, by the way. And they can sell everything to everyone. So in this regard, things will change. Yes, there will be a scent of national security into that. But as long as there is business in cyber, I think we can still play a part in that.
Thank you. Quickly, before we run out of time, let's go back to the private sector, where it all happens. How do you see the venture capital model in cybersecurity in 5 years' time? Do you see it along the same lines and models we see today, or do you see shifts in the way the market actually works, in the work model, in the frameworks?
Can I say again that I don't know? I think that what has been happening in venture capital, like in many industries, and there's a lot of cyclicality and pendulum effect, and so we have been shifting through various models, and probably we will continue to shift through different models. But very high level, I'd like to believe that venture capital is here to stay. I think it's a significant driver or enabler or supporter of innovation. And it's not only the money, by the way, it's also the funding, but it's also the advice, the access to networks of customers and partners, etc. So there's I believe, a lot of value in venture, which to me it makes sense that it will continue to be part of the supporting element of the industry. I hope, I believe that, in terms of deal terms and that sort of thing, things will get simplified, unified. I'd like to hope that we'll get past the valuation hypes that we're seeing, I hope, because things are getting very expensive relative to the status of the companies that we're seeing. Let me see if there's anything else. I think we're here to stay, essentially. And you'll see, maybe another transition will be that it's likely that we'll see, and this is my guess, but it's likely that we'll see more corporate VCs, more corporate entities investing versus, the traditional financial funds. I have a whole set of rationale behind that, but that's my assumption as well.
Thank you very much. We could talk just about that for like an additional hour, but we have to wrap up. I'd like to thank my esteemed panelists who shed different lights on this amorphic world innovation. It's policy making vertical, it's institutional vertical, it's technological vertical, and it's a multidimensional question. We scraped the surface. I'd like to thank you and thank our audience for joining us this afternoon, and please enjoy the exhibition and the rest of the convention.
Thanks for hosting us.